And we are recording with Dr. Ramseyer on Tuesday, March 12th, 2024 at 10:09 a.m. Eastern Time. He's coming at us from a beautiful farm cabin hybrid that I'm very jealous of. I told him beforehand, it reminds me of my parents' place. But guys, as you know, the show does have a sponsor now, and as I'm slowly starting to pitch this, my pitch more and more so is becoming, it doesn't even matter what the sponsor is. The fact that I have a sponsor after being banned from iTunes, YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, as you know, being canceled, it's cool enough to me that someone is sponsoring the podcast. I don't care if they make slippers or balls of yarn or scotch tape. It doesn't matter. To me, it's cool enough that they are, but the sponsor is American Hartford Gold, so you can buy silver and gold. Use promo code Tommy, text it to 65532, and you get a chance to win $5,000 of silver, which this is 100 ounces of silver, so it's about two of these. So, I mean, that's pretty cool. But again, my pitch for them, guys, is that they're sponsoring the show where I can interview people like Dr. Ramseyer or Dr. Malone or Dr. McCullough or anybody that is talking about verboten subjects and they put their name on my show. To me, that's cool enough. But today, we're going to talk about you getting canceled, and the link to your book, The Comfort Woman Hoax, is in the description, and you can go find it there. I believe I have every other link of yours in there as well. And Dr. Ramsar, while I rudely post the live link and play with my phone, as I just told you beforehand, on our first date, could you please introduce yourself and I'll post this around?
Sure. I'm Mark Ramseyer. I teach at the law school at Harvard. I've taught here for about since 1998. I taught at a couple schools before that. I grew up in Japan, missionary kid, and went to Japanese public schools through grade 6, and then lived there until age 18. I go back a lot. I give lectures in Japanese. I've taught courses in Japanese. I've written a book in Japanese and so forth. So I do a lot with Japan. And I focus on law-related issues. And sometimes this stuff gets into controversy, usually not, but occasionally, yes.
And how is it that what you're talking about led to quote unquote being canceled? It seems I mean, I guess I totally understand it as nothing is safe. And I think I said 3 or 4 years ago, when the censorship starts, it'll come for you all. It'll start with one topic, but like a growing cancer or a forest fire, it will get out of control. It will not be, it will not be harnessed like a chariot. It will just go wild and eventually come for everyone. And of course, because we're humans, we will just repeat the same mistakes of our ancestors again and again and again until the end of time. And it seems to be, I don't know, maybe that's because we're here to learn something and there's reincarnation cycles, and I don't know, but that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But just in general, so why is it that you got the X on you just for discussing comfort women?
Yeah. Yes. So I teach at a law school. So reincarnation is beyond is beyond my field. I feel. I wrote a very short article published in 2020, and it was very short because it was a footnote to history. I look at, among other things, I try to look at interesting contracts, unusual contracts. And I had 20 years ago looked at indentured servitude contracts in the sex industry in Japan. These were geisha and other licensed prostitutes. And they were interesting to me because the women were paid up front. They were paid at very high wages. They were paid up front. There was a maximum service term, typically 6 years. And if they generated sufficient revenue, they could quit early. And most seemed to quit in about 3 years. There's data on this, which made it all very interesting to a law professor. And then while I was researching something else this last decade, I ran across the discussions of the prostitutes who worked near the Japanese bases during World War II. And they were they were employed under similar contracts. But as you might expect, given if you think a little bit about what it's like to work in Tokyo and what it's like to work in a jungle next to a military base in some, what we would think of as a godforsaken place, someplace during combat. The terms were much shorter, 2 years, and the wages were higher. And I thought this was interesting. So I wrote an article. It was 8 pages. I showed it to a Japanese friend. And he said, if this controversy hadn't erupted, this would have been read by 6 specialists and your mother, which I thought, yeah, that's basically what I do. That's my life. Then this thing came out, and I started getting massive amounts of hate mail. The first day was 70 plus. They were virulently obscene, and day after day. So the first day, when it started, I went back and looked at where this was posted, this journal article, and it counted 1,200 tweets. Nobody tweets articles by me. I mean, it just doesn't happen. I write obscure law reviews.
Yeah.
So here's what it is. These prostitutes next to the bases were called comfort women.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a direct translation of the euphemism in Japanese. They were prostitutes, and they were recruited through these terms. Sometimes, apparently, some seem to have been tricked, as in told, you'll work as a nurse or something. But how many is unclear. It's pretty clear that a sizable fraction chose to do it because they were very poor and this was a high-paying job, which shouldn't surprise anybody. I mean, I grew up in Japan in the 50s and 60s, and of course, there are lots of bases, military bases. And a military base, and all the military bases I've seen, all of them have been surrounded by prostitutes and brothels. I mean, this is what
Just what it is.
this is part of what it means to be a base.
Yeah.
Poor women, it's choosing this. It's a rotten job. It's a dangerous job, but for some women who are sufficiently poor, it's one they choose. This is not the story about the Japanese, about the prostitutes next to the bases in World War II that is current. And in the West, a lot of this traces to the 1990s, when the United Nations human rights, I think it was a human rights group or some sort at the UN, published 2 reports. And the reports said that these women had been conscripted at bayonet point by the Japanese army and were sent to these so-called brothels as sex slaves. And the second one calls the brothels rape centers. And that the majority were from Korea. And so think about this. Now, who would want a story like this? Well, it happens to fit a fraction of the feminist community in humanities departments, literature, history, anthropology, and so forth, in American universities. It's also the story that was very convenient for the South Korean left. The South Korean voter electorates are split pretty close to 50-50 and pretty polarized, much like ours. To be left, though, in South Korea has a specific meaning, which is to try to pull South Korea away from Japan and the United States and closer to North Korea and China. I describe this to my friends, and they say, why would anybody in South Korea want to be pulled closer to North Korea? Right? Like, surely. The answer is that is indeed what the South Korean left is about. To be right in South Korea primarily means that uh, you want to strengthen your ties to Japan and the United States. And so pushing this story of comfort women as sex slaves is very convenient for the South Korean left because it's a way of building hate toward Japan. Okay, so where does it start? Um, the sex slave story doesn't start in the 1940s. Nobody talked about it. Virtually nobody talked about it until the 1980s. 1983, a Japanese communist ex-con, literally, ran for office as a communist, served time in a penitentiary, published what he called a memoir. And the memoir was about how he had been ordered by the army to go to certain places in South Korea, in Korea, and dragoon comfort women at bayonet point. And so he talked about it. This became a massive bestseller in Japan. The Japanese New York Times equivalent, the sort of establishment left of center. It was at the time, New York Times was once upon a time left of center. But picked it up and played it to enormous readership. And in 1990, 89, 91, I think 89 actually, the Korean translation of this book came out. And that's when all this started. But to go back, this memoir, the facts of it didn't fit what military historians knew about how the military operated. The details of the chain of command and so forth weren't right. And so historians were skeptical from the start. And by the 1990s, in fact, had determined that this was not reliable. And then before he died, the author admitted he'd made it all up. So it was a hoax. It was made up history. But what happened? It went to and the Japanese New York Times equivalent by had retracted all of its articles. It did an investigation into this. It determined it was a hoax. It was all untrue.
It
So then, what happens in Korea? In Korea, there is very quickly established an organization that we call Korean Council. It's gone through a number of different names. Just think of it as Korean Council. And almost from the very start, it was headed by a woman with very close North Korean ties. North Korean ties, as in her husband served time for passing government documents to a North Korean spy. His sister was also convicted of this, passing these documents. His sister's husband served time in yet another North Korean spying case. So this woman has North Korea written all over her. She ran this. She got control over a couple of nursing homes where most of the surviving former comfort women lived. They had government benefits and so forth. And she controlled who could talk to the press. And she picked out a very small number of the comfort women who were willing to tell stories that fit this account. There weren't very many. Most of the comfort women just refused. If that's what they have to say, they're not going to talk. And she was very ruthless about punishing comfort women. These are very old, elderly women who said anything that contradicted this. So she pushed this. They pushed it very, very hard. And The United Nations report is based on the English translation of this book that was, by the 1990s, pretty much determined by historians to be fake, right? So there's this fake book. It's translated into English. The publishes two reports expressly based on that book. And that's what we have. And that's what the North American humanities left, this part of the feminist community have picked up on. For their purposes, this notion of colonialists, right? The South Korea was part of Japan, so they consider it to be a colony of Japan. So we have the colonial Japanese government of men dragooning women to serve as sex slaves in these brothels as the Japanese army invades China and so forth. So it fits an anti-colonial story in the humanities. It fits male oppression of women. There's also this, in part of the humanities, a movement to write about wartime violence against women. And it fits that. I mean, you say, well, is there violence towards women during wartime? And the answer is, of course there is. Right? I mean, war is a terrible
War.
phenomenon.
Yeah, it's hell.
And yeah, I mean, it always struck me as kind of odd. I thought, yes, women were subjected to enormous violence during the war, but I thought men were actually even worse.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Men
yeah,
were
it's
expressly shot.
yeah, no, I mean, like
Right.
the raping and kidnapping of women is, of course, it's awful, and so is the meat grinding of every man who can hold a rifle. None of it's good. Like,
Exactly. Absolutely. So that's where it was. So you can see, the folks who decided to come after me, there were two very distinct, overlapping but distinct groups. One is this American humanities group that took this legend of um, bayonet point conscription as true, and this is the Japanese studies community, which is heavily humanities in the U.S. And then it's the second, third generation, maybe first, immigrants from South Korea in American universities. They both thought this was awful. And this turned into a canceling from the very start. And it just snowballed. At first, it was, we demand that the journal retract your article. That then built into a Ramseyer is a fraud. He's making up stories. He's falsifying documents and so forth. So it becomes a personal assassination attempt, which of course, I mean, it sort of grows from Ramseyer's article must be retracted to somehow we need to drive Ramseyer out of the academy. Obviously, if people are accusing me of fraud and so forth, this is my profession, this is my life, professional life that's at stake. And the Koreans in the U.S. were, and even from South Korea, were astonishing to me in coming up with petitions. So there was a political scientist at UCLA. He organized a petition, again, regurgitating this proven to be fraud, as in the fellow who started this story admitted he made it up before he died. But taking his story as a basis for attacking Ramseyer and retracting this article and so forth, he got 3,000 academics to sign it. There was a petition that went to Harvard saying they should punish me that had 30,000 people signing it. There was a group of they called themselves feminists. So it was a feminist letter that got 1,500 to sign, and both the 3,000 and the 1,500 had Harvard professors signing it. So these are my colleagues. The was, I thought, particularly bizarre in that it said that Ramseyer should be investigate Ramseyer under Title IX. Title IX. Title IX. Title IX began as a women should not be discriminated in the universities. And that's what the statute is. From there, it went to date rape. It's a form of discrimination. Date rape is awful, right? I mean, it's rape. That's a crime. It's a very serious crime. But under Title IX, universities started to launch investigative apparatus that then were not following the sorts of things that we consider due process, fair process in the criminal context. So we have, because when we have serious crimes, we have very serious victims. But we also have people who are accused of these crimes for whom being found guilty or even being accused can ruin their career, ruin their lives. If you're convicted, you go to prison, obviously. You rape somebody, you're convicted, you go to prison. And because of that, we have serious procedural protections, as in being able to confront your witness, have an attorney, being able to ask questions, introduce evidence, and so forth. This is important for, I think, what we consider to be fair ways of handling the people accused of very serious crimes. They're serious crimes because being accused and convicted of a serious crime can ruin somebody's life. We have Title IX university adjudicative procedure often at first dispensed with those procedural protections. So it was a very serious problem. But so now go back to Ramseyer. What's Ramseyer done? He wrote an 8-page article. And so why is this Title IX? It's because the abuse of Title IX has gone this far that one can say that somehow writing an article that doesn't fit what's the preferred account of history can lead to a professor being accused of this. And we had a couple of Harvard senior professors sign this. Must be joking. But that's where it is. The canceling is, I mean, in theory, I sort of understood how traumatic it can be. But basically, people that you knew, people that you thought were your friends are accusing you of fraud, are trying to destroy your career, are trying to obviously retract, but it certainly doesn't stop there. And you realize how alone you can be. Who's your friend? You don't know. I'm on executive committees of organizations here and there. They were holding hearings as to whether to throw me out. People were going after other articles by Ramseyer just because they needed to punish him. So they were filing complaints against other journals where I've published, saying on unrelated topics that they should retract these articles because Ramseyer's fraud and so forth. So it's all these people were your friends, your colleagues, basically coming after you and trying to destroy your life. your professional life, which is what it is to be a professor. It was incredibly traumatic. That's the short version.
No, it's that is one thing you learn is even doing this podcast. Yeah, no, it's a rude awakening when you realize just how many friends you don't have, and it's especially odd because it's not something you did. It's a topic you're covering, right? So it's like if I cover, I'll listen to all sides of everything. I'll listen to every, whatever. I try to. It's one thing I pride myself on is kind of my ability to remove my ego and, or at least attempt to remove my ego and emotions from a topic. Try to remove my political opinions, or if I can't do that, try to put them aside and give equal time to someone with opposite political opinions on a topic. But when people attack you for that, you're like, dude, I didn't do this. I'm just covering the topic. I'm just listening to what, you know, like the day after the October 7th attacks, I had on some former CIA analysts and they talked about why Israel had to defend themselves. I also had on like a hardcore like Muslim professor who talked about why Gaza or Palestine had to do the attacks because it was occupied. I didn't do anything. I didn't fund any. I didn't blow anybody up. I'm listening. When people attack you, you're like, dude, I didn't do this. I'm I'm in Maine. I'm not in like the Gaza Strip. Like I'm just talking about something that has already happened, and I'm just putting the information out there for everyone to see. Like I didn't do it. I didn't. It's like if you did cancer research, you're like, dude, I didn't invent cancer. I'm trying to figure out how it works. Don't get mad at me. And that's a very odd thing. And you do see how, for lack of a better term, you do see how weak intellectually some people are, and that their first thing is, to attack you as opposed to addressing the topic, right? There's a great book called, I think that you might like, called Base Nation by Professor David Vine, and I had him on here like 2 or 3 years ago. It's about the United States military's bases around the world. There's a chapter on comfort women, and he goes through all of it. Now, in his stance is that it's like this is caused by the U.S. The U.S. is evil. What? Again, that's fine. It's his opinion. He's allowed to have it. But he goes into talking about it, and like there is a lot of sketchy stuff. There's a lot of young girls. There's a lot of people being kidnapped. There's also a lot of people in it who say like I don't have a college education, my parents are peasants, and I make 5 times what my dad makes working near this military base. I'm not proud of it. I don't like it, but I have enough money to send my kid to school. All right, that
Mhm.
doesn't make Professor Vine a bad person for covering this topic. He's just doing interviews and just uncovering. It's like uncovering a dinosaur bone, and someone gets mad at you. You're like, I didn't. I'm sorry that evidence of a dinosaur upsets your worldview. I didn't do it. I just found the bone. It's a maddening thing, but the point of everything I'm saying is if I could put a value on what I'm ranting about is that when you see just how many friends you don't have, and like you said, when you see just how alone you can be, what you're actually doing is seeing something that's always been there. It's just you had the illusion before that you had a richer, more, I don't know, faithful group of friends versus it's not that you lost them, it's that you're realizing they were never actually there. And in that sense, you know, truth is, I think, there's whatever happens after the exposition of truth is probably the best thing. That doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but to realize that you maybe all these people weren't your friends. It's not that you lost them. It's when you find out Santa's not real. It's not that Santa died. It's that Santa was never there, right? And it can suck, and it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but it is ultimately good. So, be it comfort women or be it interviews, I've had on pro Russian people. I've had on Ukrainian refugees. Like I don't care. I just want to know what's going on. It ultimately, I think, yeah, be it podcasts about that or be it, doing research into comfort women, it is, I think, ultimately, it's probably a good thing. It leads you to a more accurate understanding of the reality you find yourself in. That the reality is
Yeah,
y-
it's Yeah, I think it's, yes, no, exactly as you say. You're learning something about, and it's with a little, is it that, so the folks that I thought were my friends that were signing these petitions, is it that they weren't really my friends? It's that I think it's that they have no spine.
Correct.
It's,
Correct.
it's a problem of moral courage,
Correct.
that they probably aren't friends to anybody. And the thing about canceling, which is it's basically it's a very, very old school. It's called it used to be called ostracism, and
Oh
they
yeah.
taught it
Yeah.
in
Outcast, kick him out of the
taught about
tribe.
it in biology. Yep. Yep. And primates do this. Chimpanzees do it.
They do it in
Apes.
prison, solitary confinement.
And
It's get
if
him out
you're
of the group.
yeah, yes, exactly. With primates, when you're kicked, you can't. You need the group of apes to protect against predators. And with what are called hunter-gatherer societies around the world, whether it's a rainforest or Australian outback, those two, if you're kicked out of the group, you can't survive. As a hunter-gatherer, you need to be part of the group to be able to protect your children and so forth. Um, and the rule has always been instinctively, going back to primates. So this is genetic. Um, you don't just ostracize the target. You ostracize everybody who defends the target,
Hmm.
everybody who refuses to participate. So I think at some level, university professors understand, or it's really, I think, more deeply rooted than that. That if you don't participate in the announced ostracism of somebody, that you will then be ostracized for it too. And so what you really need a sense of moral courage, that, you actually, I'm not going to ostracize somebody who, when I don't think he really did. I'm not going to ostracize my friend. That you need that spine, and an awful lot of people in this world don't have it. And that's, to me, that's the truth that hits hard.
Hmm.
We want to raise our kids, not necessarily to be quarreling about everything with the world around them, but we want to raise them with the sense that they can be, they're not going to attack somebody for something that he didn't do, or that being a friend to somebody means standing by him even if it costs you something. I think, most of us think the world would be better if there were more people like that. And so we try to raise our kids like that. But there are an awful lot of people in the academy that don't do that. There is one theory. I mean, obviously there are lots of theories, but given how much very, very serious problem this has become, that the university sort of selects for people who follow the crowd.
Hmm.
Um, to to be hired at a university and promoted and so forth, you need to play by the game. Maybe this is true in all around the world, in other professions too. But the folks who are one group of people who are successful in the academy are those who take their cues from the people around them, and know when it is not to say something that's likely to lead to a canceling. Another thing that this confirms in my mind that you mentioned a while back, is that this can happen to anybody. Okay, so we have this Ramseyer. He writes about foreign law. He writes about Japanese law, right? I mean, he does things like what's water law in Japan? What's the development of hot springs law? Well, I mean, you could have easily have six people on your show about how universities are promoting and hiring people who do utterly worthless work that interests nobody other than the six people in their specialty. Yeah, I mean, go ahead. That's Ramseyer. And even somebody like that can be canceled over what turns out to be a hot button political issue. Tells you something about how really dangerous. Let me add, they wanted to retract my article. Why didn't they just say, okay, Ramseyer's wrong. We'll try to write an article opposing him. I think if they did, they would have discovered that, lo and behold, it's all based on this fraudulent memoir. And like, okay, what are we going to write? Um, but the retraction of contesting articles is something that this crowd has been doing. So shortly after, as in 6 months after my article came out, a Korean economist, a South Korean economist, wrote an article in a prominent news weekly about how, yes, in fact, the comfort women were not coerced. They were not kidnapped into this at all. It's the same thing as Ramseyer. And the same group of people who attacked me attacked this journal, and this journal retracted the article. A serious historian of Korea published a history of Korea a year after my article came out. And in it, she says, actually, these women, for the most part, chose it because they were very poor and it paid well. They didn't like the job, but it paid well. The folks who attacked me attacked the publisher of this textbook, and got them to retract the textbook and get rid of it. So this story that I'm telling you, the origins of this sex slave myth in a 1980s vintage hoax by a communist ex-con in Japan, you're not going to find it in English, or almost no discussion of it in English, because the folks who try to control the narrative, that's the term that professors use for this, who try to control the narrative on this topic, have tried to censor everything that comes out. If you go to Japan, if you read Japanese, it's all over the history and the news, and everybody who reads newspapers understands that this is a fake story, and the Japanese New York Times equivalent retracted all its articles. That was big news. In South Korea, serious professors understand this. And this sort of goes to the intolerance of the folks who were coming after me. In South Korea, the left has stacked the courts and has stacked the prosecutors. And professors are routinely prosecuted for criminal defamation of the comfort women if they say what I say. So as a professor, you can go to prison in South Korea for saying what I said. If it is substantially worse than it is here.
That is absolutely maddening. But it does kind of, for me, it's helped me in that it's kind of given me a better understanding of history. When you look back at anything, I think probably the most widely used of the most the term most widely used around something like the Holocaust is like, how did they let that happen, or never again. But it does start to make a little more sense. It's like right before a storm, when it's windy and then blows all the trees, and then the lighter sides of the leaves turn up, and you can kind of see. It's almost like a visualization of leaves, and you look at it and you could say, like, how did that happen? Well, it's like, well, no one leaf thought it was the problem, and it flipped with the wind, and all it takes is a sufficient wind, and all the leaves will turn upside down. And if there's some giant, large scale emergent phenomena, no one leaf really thinks it's responsible, or the quote, no one raindrop thinks it's responsible for the flood. But when you see anything, for instance, comfort women, and you see kind of, yeah, the academic closing of the ranks, around this topic, and yeah, select for those that are willing to climb the ladder and kind of do what the central party demands of it. It brings clarity to most of history. It's so easy to look back at really anything before color television. They just go, that was back then. It's black and white. It's, yeah, they're different from us, right? It's like you can identify with the '60s because you look at it and you're like, oh, the Flower Children. It's like, no, it's just because it's in color TV. But go back to the '30s and it's kind of sped up and everyone's walking around with top hats and you're like, yeah, they're a different species. And it's like, not really, man. They are you and me. Like, you go read The Jungle by Upton Sinclair, and they're all talking about, surely, if we all gang together, we can fight against the corporations and they will stop exploiting us. And it's like, that was written in like 1904. Like, we've gone nowhere. Like, it's all the same, right? Go back to like the 1880s, and it's like, there's always enough money for military expenditure, but never enough for healthcare. And it's like, tell me how that's changed. But so what it does is it kind of brings it into focus more. You look back at things and you go, they weren't different from us, because I'm experiencing right now on a smaller scale something like comfort women, and denouncing them, and removing the outcasts. All of history starts to make more sense. You go, oh yeah, yeah, no, I totally get how Hitler came to power. I totally get how World War One started. I totally get how the Civil War started. You go, yeah, yeah, no, I totally. And then it also with positive things, maybe like the American Revolution. Yeah, a couple guys grabbed their balls and were like, "Hey, screw the British. Let's get some muskets and let's stack some bodies." And like, you see how much more. Again, it doesn't mean good or bad. It just means you start to understand history and how it happened more. You start to see how small groups of people can make massive amounts of change, because most people don't want to rock the boat. I mean, American Revolution, that was what, 3% of the population. 9/11 was 19 people. For better or worse, a small group of people can enact wild amounts of earth shattering change, because most people kind of don't want to touch it. They're just like, yeah, there's so many reports from the FBI and the CIA of like chatter leading up in '99 and 2000. They all just pass it on. They just do a report, and no one person's like, "Hey guys, we should maybe look at this." All the NSA computers are pinging. They're saying there's a big attack coming. Everyone just kicked up the chain of command. I did my thing. I did my report. I get another star. And you really start to realize just how much of history is a incredibly small percentage of people making actual decisions and changes, and everyone else just kind of goes along with it. And it can be for the better or for the worse, but you do see how many people really have no spine, no desire to plant their feet. Doesn't mean that they're not aware of it, and that's kind of the other thing is, how could they be so stupid? You start to realize they're not stupid. They're fully aware of what's going on. They just don't want to rock the boat, and I think that's what you're experiencing, unfortunately.
Sounds exactly right. Yep.
Um,
People don't, yeah, they see what happens to somebody for taking a position, and don't want to go there. And in a sense, it's sort of rational, but it's rational in a way that, we'd like to raise our children to understand that sometimes you might have to take a stand, and that we hope they'll take a stand that says, right is right, wrong is wrong. What we say what, Horton's, can't think of the Horton quote, but anyhow, that you take a stand for what's right and you stand by your friends.
hmm.
Uh, if you're lucky, this one you won't confront this during your life, maybe, but you won't know when it comes. It'll hit you from behind when you're not least expecting it.
And I would say you probably want it to come into your life, because it will find its way to your front door, and it's better to have experienced it and learn from it and know how to navigate its waters than for it to hit you one day and have no idea what to do. Like
Hmm.
I've got to experience God.
Yeah.
I've got to experiencing it in my early 30s. And it's been painful, but I think it's set me up. I think it's set me up for the best. Like I have a better understanding of it, and I'm not naive, and I'm like, oh, the groupthink will never approach me. And honestly, and not to just to sound not to sound like some just blind, intoxicated nationalist, but you also start to realize like how lucky we are that you and I get to. It's a decision where the implications and the repercussions are being socially ostracized as opposed to being thrown at the wall and shot. You do start to, it does give you a little more appreciation for, sure, it sucks. You can still lose your job. People can, kick you out of your professorship. But it is better than like Soviet Russia, where if you have if you have an opinion and dare to voice it, you're shot in the, Lubyanka prison, whatever the KGB prison is. Versus here, it's, it doesn't mean it's perfect in the U.S. The U.S. has a lot of flaws. But the worst that happened, you and I get to talk about this openly on an internet podcast. You and I aren't meeting in some pub with hoods pulled up and like whispering about, resistance. We get to openly talk about this. And really the worst that's going to happen is someone's going to click a thumbs down on the Rumble video. Like it does give you a little more appreciation of what we have here. And you go, yeah, in China, a van pulls up and you and your family disappear. North Korea, your parents, your grandparents, your kids, and your grandkids are all worked to death in a labor camp. Here is like, yeah, I get an angry email. Somebody says I'm a misogynist, and I just respond LOL. But, it does give you a little more appreciation for where you live and the importance of polishing the rights that we do have, polishing and keeping clean,
Hmm.
like a gun or like an engine or a bicycle chain, keeping the machinery clean, because it could mean that one day your grandkids don't have it. They won't know what it is, and they'll look back at what we do as alien. They'll be like, man, they used to be able to just say what they wanted back in 2024. That's crazy. Like, they just stood up and said what they wanted. Like, you don't want it to be that way. You want them to also be able to do it, right? And it's perhaps egocentric to think that, you and I are at the center of something and, ripples throughout history. But I mean, there is to come back to reincarnation, really, more and more I start to think that whatever problems we're approached with or what we're dealt with in this life, if we don't deal with them, I feel like we just have to deal with them in the next one. It's like repeating a class. I took pre-calculus 4 times in college. I withdrew. I withdrew, failed 3 times, and I wanted to go to medical school. And I got into medical school, but it finally dawned on me my senior year. I was like, I have to pass this class, or I can't apply. And I just stopped screwing around and was like, I have to pass the class. I kind of feel like whatever this reality is, where these weird self-aware beings on this rock floating around a star, it's all very odd. It's kind of an acid trip. I start to think that like we might be here. We might have repeated the semester before. You and I might have talked in a past life, and we've done this before. And maybe you and I are finally like we're seniors now, and we're like, dude, I have to pass this class. I have to pass the thing where you stand up to the social outcast, and I have to get an A or I'm screwed. It might be that. I really don't know. Um, but yeah, it's a microcosm of you should be able to stand up and talk about whatever you want, and especially if it's not even something you did. It's just a topic you're covering. So I apologize. I'm rambling and ranting.
Yeah. No. Yes. And it's over the last 10 years, it's gotten increasingly pervasive in the university. So that, I think, okay, Ramseyer gets canceled over what? Over this 1938 phenomenon on the Korean Peninsula that did or didn't happen, and he has to spend 15 minutes explaining what the dispute is before you understand what happened.
Yeah.
Um, so it's it reaches there, right? I mean, we've heard about the hot button topics, which I won't raise because and it would be the next 2 hours on this show. But we know what those are. But we understand that we have a real serious problem of intolerance in the university with these hot button issues. But it's way beyond the hot button issues. It's on very obscure questions of even at this point. You can't have a serious research university if some topics are off. Are beyond honest discussion. And that's the problem that we have at Harvard. And it's the problem that is all over North American universities.
I would say it's more intense than you can't have a serious research institution. I would say you can't have one at all. I mean, again, in college, I mean, on days where I was like lazy or hungover, I would just go over things I'd already learned. I'd like go over organic chemistry flashcards, but I didn't want to actually open up a new chapter and learn about a new thing. And it's because I didn't. I was just like, yeah, let's just go over the stuff I've already learned. Well, I'm not learning anything. I'm just going through the motions. If you can't touch hot button topics, you're not doing anything. You're just going over. I mean, what are we? So we can't touch that. We can't touch that. We're just going to go over the basics, like an object at rest will remain at rest unless acted upon by an external force. It's like we're just going over Newton's laws. This isn't research. This is we're just patting each other on the back. Like, and there are serious implications. I mean, some of it's more abstract. Like, I think it's 2016 or 2017. They did that paper on gravitational waves. That didn't really impact anyone's lives. Maybe somebody at DARPA, but that's about it. Or the Higgs boson. Like, that's not, you know, no one really cares about that. But look at something like the book The Butchering Art by Dr. Lindsay Fitzharris about Dr. Joseph Lister and the entire idea of sanitizing surgical wounds in like the 1800s. He was attacked
Mhm.
viciously. He was mocked. They would tell him, they'd be like, you can come to our university and teach medicine. They'd be like, but please. They'd be like, I pulled a lot. I mean, there are literally like letters of, it's along the lines of, I pulled a lot of strings to get you here. Please don't do the whole clean the wound with ethanol. It upsets a lot of people. And he was like, no, like, fuck you. Like, he went to the United States and he was mocked endlessly because he was during the U.S. Civil War. He was like, stop putting dirt in wounds. Like, you need to clean it. And they laughed at him. And he's a rare example of someone that he got vindication while he was still alive. It's eventually. I mean, we've all heard the term. What do you think Listerine comes from? It's based on Dr. Joseph Lister. Now, granted, it's mouthwash, but his entire thing was you got to clean the wound. Yeah, he's like, I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works. I don't know if they had microscopes and they could do germ theory. But he was like, if you clean the wound, surgical survival in the 1850s London, survival rates went from like 4% to like 80%. 80% in 2024 is awful, but 4% to 80%, I mean, that's a 20-fold increase in, for whether it's, removing pus from a like a breast, or, from a wound from being stabbed. It was a death sentence. If you got stabbed, it was a death sentence. It was just, you get dirt, they'd put hay in it, and then you die from sepsis. And there's a real example of someone who changed the face of medicine, and God knows how many lives were saved. So it's like, it's not always something abstract like gravitational waves or the Higgs boson. Sometimes it's something as crazy as what you and I take for granted. You go into the hospital and the doctor comes in, puts on gloves, and cleans their hands. Like that, 150 years ago, that was considered quackery. That was considered something that needed to be ostracized. So, maybe you and I are doing topics where people might go, yeah, I don't really know how that's going to change the world. But the thing is you never know which one is going to change the world. So the very idea of bowing to the crowd has literally never been the way to move the world forward. It's always been the tactic of cowards and people who just want to go along to get along. And if you do that, and if we just
Mhm.
go along to get along, we would still be in caves. People would be going, "I'm not doing that whole fire thing. That's a bunch of malarkey. I don't, the idea that you can create light and heat. I don't do that. I'm a traditionalist. I just wait for the sun to rise, and I beat a tiger with like a bat. Like I don't do the whole fire thing. I don't use a rock. Like that's misinformation. That's how it goes forever in every topic. Like so, I mean, yeah, if you want a simpler life, I suppose you don't have to, I don't know, plant your feet and stand up for something. But dude, it is the basis for the very world we live in right now. So that's my pitch for free
Mhm.
speech and standing up for what you believe in. That's my little
Thank
campaign.
you. Thank you. Um, yeah, and I hope your listeners support you for that. I mean, Harvard, the problem at Harvard really isn't people on the outside. Problem at Harvard is people on the inside. It's portions of the faculty who want to shut down discussion. And forces on the outside, people like you, Harvard alumni, even Harvard donors are saying, no, actually, you want our support. Um, you have to give faculty and students the right, the ability to question what they hear. And sometimes they'll be right, and sometimes they'll be wrong. But that's how we figure out whether you should pack up, right? I mean, it's you have to have these discussions. You have to look at evidence. You have to think about principles and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have the ability to do that on an unrestrained basis.
Mm. Yeah, and you'll often find it's obviously not a case for everything, but a lot of times people pursuing something like there's not a lot of ego involved. It's just like, yeah, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Like whatever. Like,
Mhm.
it's just go for it. And
That's what
yeah,
we want.
yeah, it's man, if it makes me think of that Terrence McKenna quote talking about how, all drugs should be legal, but it's along the lines of life is the quote I think is if life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness doesn't apply to your brain and your ability to, ingest drugs, then the Declaration of Independence wasn't worth the hemp it was written on. It's kind of like, man, if you're surrendering, I mean, I get it if there's like a military occupation and it's like, yeah, don't rock the boat. I don't want my family to be executed by some occupying force. But man, if you're afraid to rock the boat when it comes to independent thought, I mean, are you even still alive? I mean, truly, like, are you not? If you have seceded territory within your own internal consciousness and monologue, are I think it's a legitimate like, philosophical question. Are you still an independent sentient being, or are you an automaton? Like it really is like, dude, if you can't even entertain it, I don't want to think about that. That's wrong speak. It's like a weird form of limbo. Like, are you alive anymore? Like, are you even a thing? If you just, if you, I don't look at like an automated factory that's like just stamping bumpers or, license plates. No part of me is like, I wonder what that machine thinks. You're like, it's a machine. It's just it produces Honda Civics. Like if you can't sit there, like what's the statue, like the thinking man. If you can't sit there and just look at things and be like, where do clouds come from? Why is the sky blue? Why do Isaac Newton? Why do apples fall? If you can't do that, man, like, are you? Like, it's a legitimate question. Like, are you technically alive? How are you different from an animal? I don't know. It's so I don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah, well, we have departments in the university that ask these questions, and I hope that the students and the profs can debate these things, right, and can debate them and figure them out. We have other departments in the universities where the faculty don't let young faculty or senior faculty or students ask certain questions. And we're seeing the effect. So these departments get steadily declining enrollments. History, literature, they're going down the tubes. They're going down the tubes because smart students can major in lots of different things, right? They don't have to major in history. And if majoring in history means they're going to be turning into in welding a Honda Civic, then they'll major in something else instead, because we do have departments. And the sciences, particularly what we call STEM, right? Science, technology, and so forth, where students can ask all sorts of questions and they can debate them. And students with options will gravitate over there rather than become a machine, a cog in a department that doesn't allow this. And so you don't get the good students. If you don't get students, then universities don't let you hire new faculty. If you can't hire new faculty, then you're not going to get good graduate students. If you can't get good graduate students, and so forth. And so the whole thing for the last 20 years in these departments has been getting worse and worse. And they're almost sort of selecting now for people with a similar level of intolerance. So, can this go on forever? No, but how long can it go on? Will it go on for 1 year? Will it go on for 20 years? I don't know, but certainly things are going to change. Um, and one theory, the faculty, we over coffee or even more over beers, try to just talk about, so what's going to happen to us? And the pessimists will say, this can't be turned around anymore. We're past the point of no return. And the universities as a whole are simply going to disintegrate, which is a possibility, which is, I think you really have to take seriously, because there's so many places now where faculty can get canceled, thrown out for not towing the line. The optimists, I think, and so I consider myself an optimist on this, is that there are many departments in the university that are still strong, where you can still ask questions, you can still disagree. They're in the sciences, they're in engineering, they're in mostly in medicine and so forth. So those will survive, and then it'll be a question of what do we do with the departments that are beyond repair. And it wouldn't surprise me if departments are starting to close them. Humanities departments are being closed. They just can't get good students. They can't get any students. And so we have this, the question that you raise is, it becomes sort of the university becomes an institutional question of, well, okay, do we close this school down? Do we close this department down? If they can't, or do we somehow try to reinvigorate it? Put somebody else in. We talk in the universities of, we use the bankruptcy metaphor. We say we will put this department into receivership. And what this means, and it happens sometimes, you appoint somebody from the outside to come in and give him the power to push through appointments, to veto promotions, and so forth. And it's basically just start over. So it all becomes very complicated because all of this varies by university and how the university is run, if it's a state school, a private school, and all that. But we're trying, and so I hope I hope your viewers take away from it that we are in very serious trouble. Um, but and I hope they stand up for us.
I mean, we're coming up on an hour, so we'll wrap it up. But it's you do start to see it as more of like an organism with a long lifespan, and it's no different than a corporation or or a family. Like you always have the pioneer, a Carnegie, a Rockefeller, a Vanderbilt, and then you have the next generation that sometimes pushes it a little farther forward. Then you have a third generation that kind of coasts. And then you have like fourth and fifth generations that are trust fund kids that just tank the whole thing. The company gets cannibalized. But it's also that lays the ground for the new organism. So when you have something like Harvard, the esteemed name, it's like turning a cruise ship. It takes a while for something like that to, well, for lack of a better term, to die. And so you might not see, the immediate effects of closing ranks, shutting down free thought. Um, but in time it will, and you will have people push away, and they'll, it's the entrepreneur that drops out and goes, you know what, we're gonna start our own company. We're gonna push this thing, and they get laughed at, and they always seem to start it in a garage, and then 20 years later, it's known as Apple or Google, and it's just, well, what were their roots? Well, their roots were is they were like, screw this, I'm gonna go do my own thing, and then that blossoms into a mega corporation, and it attracts all the best minds, and then slowly, through hubris and an assumption, the massive organism slowly falls apart, and a new thing is born. So, you know, will it necessarily remain? Will it be Harvard or Yale or Stanford? Or probably not. History would say that, like empires, they'll fall apart. But it's from falling apart, it gets cannibalized, and the new thing grows. So you can't stop the march of progress. It's just, you'll either go along with progress, or you'll fall apart, and that's just, you know no different than, we're not hiring that Joseph Lister at this medical school. We fill surgical wounds with dirt. It's how we've always done it. It's how Dad did it. That's how Dad's dad did it, and I won't hear any of this. And it's like, all right, man, I mean, enough time in the future, if you did that, you'd be shut down and jailed for intentional murder, right? It just changes, dude. It's here, we don't talk about the sun. The sun revolves around the earth. We know that the earth is flat, and so just drop it. Good luck getting a contract for Northrop Grumman if your CEO is like, yeah, how do you launch satellites above 30,000 feet? Doesn't it hit the firmament? They'd be like, what? Like, get out of my off. Pentagon would blacklist you. Like, so as much resistance to progress as there is, it's also the only thing that actually passes on. It just, you know, it's like the shrew is what survived the KT impact 65 million years ago. Not the dinosaur, not the 30-ton thing covered in armor. The shrew. It make I'm not a shrew, I'm a T-Rex. Good luck. Good luck. Can you crawl underground? No. Good luck. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. It's the same thing, and we don't allow discussion of comfort women. And it's like that ideology is going to. It's the same reason like I make my bed every morning, because I remember seeing some college commencement speech of like a 4-star admiral or general talking about making your bed. He's like, if you can't make your bed, the very thing you sleep in that only you reap the benefits from, how are you going to do anything else? How are you going to operate an aircraft carrier? And it's little things like that. Like, if you can't keep your apartment clean, if you can't keep your phone charged, how in God's name are you going to start a Fortune 500 company? So it's like, man, if you can't allow a professor to just discuss an obscure paper talking about comfort women in Japan that, like you said, 6 specialists and your mother should read, that's indicative of. We'll wrap it up with this. I think it might have been Led Zeppelin, it might have been the Rolling Stones, I forget who, but they had a massive kind of like rolling caravan whenever they would go on tour. And what they would do is, if they ever had like a new, I don't know, venue that would kind of take control of setting up all their all their stuff. I think it was the Grateful Dead, the Wall of Sound, that huge wall of speakers. They would also ask for one thing. They would ask for, they had the checklist of everything they wanted. But one thing they would also ask for is, they would ask for, and it's brilliant. They would ask for a bowl of M&Ms or a bowl of Skittles with no green Skittles. And if they got the bowl of Skittles in the green room and it had no green Skittles, then they knew that the people were really paying attention to every request. and they didn't even worry about the checklist. They're like, these guys have an attention to
Oh, okay.
detail.
All right.
If they got the bowl of Skittles and it was full of green ones, they'd do like something. They'd start looking around, and sure enough, the speakers weren't plugged in, or they weren't set to whatever they wanted. So again, you might look at it and be like, it's Skittles. Yeah, man, if you can't let a professor talk about comfort women, something's going on a much deeper level. And it's true. It's true. So, Dr. Ramseyer, thank you so much for coming on here. I know my show is a bit of there's really no structure to it. As you can tell, we just zipped around everywhere, and I tend to go off on rambling rants, but that's what I love about it. And thank you for coming on here, and I'd love to have you on again sometime.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming on here, guys. The link to the book is in the description. Dr. Ramsar, I'll email you this link so you can have a copy of it. And yeah, again, thank you so much for what you do, and keep fighting the good fight. Don't back
Thank
down
you.
to anyone, man. Not that you need me to tell that to you, but and for everyone listening,
That's right. Don't
yeah,
back down.
don't back down, man.
Stand by your friends.
Exactly. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for coming on here, guys. Thank you for watching. God
Recording
bless
stopped.
everybody. Peace. What's up, guys? For you guys to listen, hold on. I need to take some Tums. My tummy's grumbling. So, um, excuse me. Kind of what I just talked about, or what we just talked about. Excuse me. Is the importance of free speech, being able to say whatever you want. Um, Makes me think of that line from Apollo 13, which who knows if it's factual? I don't care. They're all talking about like, the different systems in it. They're like, we only have this much thrust, and this side's like, well, they only have this much food, and another side's like, they only have this much material, and finally, the one engineer comes in and goes, the only thing that matters are the power people. Everyone, because it's all these groups of people lobbying, saying like, we need priority. And finally, that one group comes in and goes, we're the power plant people. If the power plant runs out, everything else is fucked. Therefore, we are the most important. And it's true. It's all your other ideas don't matter if there's no power. And that's my pitch for American Hartford Gold. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, it doesn't even matter what the product is. It doesn't matter if it's bullion. It doesn't matter if they're selling pens or water bottles or hand towels. The fact that someone is looking at my show for all of my vulgar language and all of my opinions, and as hard-headed as I can be and as wild as I can be, interviewing someone that, you know, talks about how terrorist attacks are good. That's a tough pill to swallow. But the fact that a company, any company, looks at it and goes, "Yeah, you know what? You should have the ability to talk, and we're going to fund it. We're going to give them money." That's hardcore to me. That's legitimately like hardcore to me. It's just like, again, I don't even care what it is they sell. I don't care if it's blankets or if chapstick. If somebody's like, "Yeah, man, you can keep covering these topics. Just wing it." To me, that's hardcore. And it doesn't matter if it's a grill or socks. I'm like, "Hey, dude, that's badass. Thank you." So that's kind of my pitch for American Heart for Gold is regardless of you can go down all the lines of the Federal Reserve has printed 80% of all U.S. dollars in the last 3 years or some shit, or central bank digital currencies, or we're heading towards World War III. All that stuff, it's all viable and it is all pertinent, but the very fact that someone's willing to back my show, I think it's the biggest selling point for this. I always point to Tim Dillon, my favorite comedian. he used to have a sponsor called Sheath Underwear, and the owner was a former special forces guy, but was a huge fan of Tim Dillon, and he was just like, you can say whatever you want, your comedy is so good. And so Tim Dillon would just go on these rambling rants talking about how this guy was a war criminal, how he worked for the Taliban, just it's clearly BS, but it was so funny. And he would always wrap up the ad with saying, "This guy supports comedy and he supports my freedom to say whatever I want." And I remember I did, and I know other people that did, that just bought a pair of the underwear. I don't think I ever wore them. I think it was like mailed to the wrong address, and I didn't care. It was more so of just like, yeah, man, I don't care who the sponsor is. That's badass. That somebody is just like, yeah, fuck it, say whatever you want. That's funny. That's cool to me. And so, I will pitch the gold and the importance of bullion, but more than anything, I would just say, like, dude, they're sponsoring this show. They're giving me a legitimate amount of money that I'm not. Podcast isn't quite at self sufficiency, but this brought it a lot closer. So that's my, like, on a personal level, my pitch for it. Um, and then on another level, so like the silver I have right here, like this is mine. I bought this. I started buying bullion in 2021. I think July 2021 after I read The Creature from Jekyll Island by uh is it G. Gordon Ramsay? J. Gordon Ramsay? Um uh is it G. Gordon? Is it Ramsay? The Creature from Jekyll Island. It's a great book. Because I wanted my podcast. I had some money, and I would skim off every month, and I was like, I don't want to put it in stock because, like, I'm not trying to grow this as a nest egg. I'm just putting aside money to keep the show operating past April 2024, which is when my private investment runs out. And I was like, but I also don't want to just put cash, like, in a bag and put it in a lockbox because inflation's insane. I just wanted something that didn't, devalue. I didn't really care about growing it. I didn't want to risk it. I didn't want to buy Tesla and Apple. I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea when the next depression or recession's coming. And also, seeing the truckers in Canada in 2022 and just seeing the government just switch off your bank account. I was like, I don't like that idea either, man. It's the same reason why I have the podcast on external hard drives. Is as cool as Rumble is, I don't trust anyone. Just last week Spotify removed one of my episodes. I used to shill for Spotify all the time because they would never censor. And then they removed one of my episodes. And I'm not worried about it because I have all of my episodes on external hard drives. So I also just don't trust anyone, and it's my own sort of, well, it's not paranoia if it's based in reality. So that's also my pitch for Bullion is, you know, you should invest, you should grow your money, and that is you would need to do stocks and bonds for that. And I'm not going to even pretend to understand that, and I'm not going to tell you that because it's not something I do. It's something I hope to do one day, but it's not something I do now. Right now, I just have this as money that I can't lose, and it won't devalue. It'll just go up, and it won't. It'll just retain its value. It'll go up with inflation. Um, and then also, and I thought about this yesterday, and I kind of feel stupid for not thinking about it before. This is like the only sponsor I could have where I'm not even asking you to spend money, right? If I tell you to, like, I'm sponsored by My Pillow and Heaven's Harvest and Prismatic batteries and Trusted RX and the Wellness Company. But that's all stuff where it's like, go use a promo code and you'll get a percentage off, but you are buying something, be it multivitamins or prepper food or blankets or pillows or whatever. And that's all well and good. But you do still have to spend something, and you might be like, yeah, I don't actually want to spend the money. I don't want any of that stuff. And for that, I would say you go to Patreon or Locals and support the show. If you're just like, yeah, Tommy, I just want to give you money. But there might be another group of y'all that's like, yeah, I can't afford to just give you money. Like, and I can't afford to also buy something that I don't need. Maybe you don't need a pillow. Maybe you don't need a blanket. You're not actually it is kind of interesting. I thought about it yesterday, and it kind of dawned on me that it's a great pitch. You're not actually spending anything on bullion because you're getting something that is worth the money that you just spent. And it's not like a car that depreciates the second you drive it off the lot. If you spend, I don't know, $3,000 on or what's gold right now, like 2180. If you spend $2,180 on a ounce of gold, that ounce of gold is worth $2,180. Like, you have the thing that's worth the thing. So you're actually not even spending money. You're just taking money. You're taking. I'm asking you to take $101 bills and go to a bank and get $100 bill in return and use promo code TPC, and I don't know, you get a free lollipop. You're not spending any money. You're actually not spending anything. You're getting something. You're just saving money. You're putting it away as savings. So that's kind of my pitch for the bullion is like, dude, just you're getting something that's worth the money. You can go sell it. Like, you're not buying anything. You're taking your money and you're just putting it in another form of money, which is kind of, it's dope as a sales pitch. Is, yeah, no, you just saving money. And I've talked about it before. There's also some truth to it. Is all the reasons I just said why you should buy bullion is also it in college. I used to leave my debit card at home, and I would just bring like 20 or $30 with me because I knew I would get shit faced, and then just want to buy all my friends shots, and then the next day I'd be really mad at myself for spending all that money. Um, I've had stock on E-Trade before. It's very easy to sell a share of Apple or Tesla, and then instantly cash out and have it sent to your bank. Yeah, within like a couple minutes, you can convert that to cash in your bank, so you can get an Uber. You can't really do that with bullion. It's much harder to go find a place and physically go deliver the thing you bought and then get money in return. So it's also a way of, it kind of puts your lack of impulse control. It kind of puts it in a cage. You know, if I get drunk and I'm like, I want to buy a new gaming computer, I just gotta sell this thing. This thing, I don't know, what's this, $2,500, $3,000. You know, I'm like, if I just sell that, I can go get an RTX 4090. Yeah, I can't do that real quick. It's gonna take at least a day. I'm gonna have to go find a place and drive there, and by then it's the next morning. You're like, do I really need a new gaming computer? No, I don't. So that's also my pitch for it, man. Is, if you're like me and money burns a hole in your pocket, go buy some silver, go buy some gold, go buy some platinum, and last of all, and not least of all, is if you use promo code Tommy, you get a chance at $5,000 of free silver. So this is 100 ounces. I think that this runs like $2,500 to $3,000. So you almost get two of them. Here's 200 ounces of silver. That's not nothing, man. That's kind of dope. I don't think I'm eligible. Otherwise, I would absolutely do it, and I wouldn't tell any of y'all. And I would be like, "Oh yeah, I'm Tommy, but I'm not Tommy's podcast. Give me the silver." Um, but that's my pitch, man. Is it's a legit thing, and it supports the show. So you want money that won't devalue. You want savings that you won't spend from impulse. And if you want to support the podcast, a company that supports my ability and my decision to say and do whatever I want, be it election fraud or COVID vaccine or comfort women from Japan, man, go support the show. American Hartford Gold. Text Tommy to 65532. Support the show, dude. And even if you don't want to buy anything, just go text it. It makes me look good. But that's my pitch for it, dude. So, yeah, I got another show in 28 minutes that I got to get ready for. So, guys, thank you for watching. I love you. Peace.